Yo, what's going on guys? Camille here. In this video we're gonna be doing a tier list for Tighnari's best weapons. Or Tighnari's best weapons. Yeah, that's right. This is like the first Genshin character where I actually know the pronunciation. Pretty sure. If you're in the comments telling me how do I pronounce that, you're just wrong. Because I'm pretty sure that's how it is pronounced. But yeah, throughout the video I'm still gonna call him Tighnari. Just for the simplicity, I'm not gonna be switching languages every single time. And I'm not gonna be flexing my pronunciations on you guys every single time. But yeah, we're gonna be doing a Tighnari's weapons tier list. Keep in mind guys, obviously there are still a couple of things we don't know about Tighnari. Mainly it's about the teams and Dendra reactions. There's still a lot of things that are unclear about like his teams, which are the best teams for him. And that's because we still don't know much about the Dendra reactions. We know about them, but we don't know like how they scale and how strong they are and stuff like that. So we don't know about building elemental mastery on him and all of these things. So this weapon tier list is still not like fully final, but hopefully it's pretty close to what it's actually gonna be. Keep in mind guys, Tighnari is gonna scale with elemental mastery a little bit, and he's also gonna need attack. He's gonna have kind of a low base attack, especially for a 5-star character, so we're gonna need to boost his attack. Also, generally most of his damage is gonna come from his charge attacks and his elemental burst. So generally speaking, when we're going to be ranking these weapons, any weapons that are going to give you elemental mastery and some attack or boost your charge attacks or elemental burst damage are going to be good. Any weapons that don't give you any of that are going to be bad. So this is like how are we going to be ranking. But yeah, so without further ado, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's begin. Alright, so these are all of the bows in Genshin right now. As you can see, there are a lot, so we're not going to spend too much time on every single bow. So the video is not going to be like too long, but we're still going to explain why I placed it on this tier. Obviously, as I said, D and C are like the bad weapons, kind of. B are like the average weapons or the minimum you should be using. A are the above average, and then S tier are his best weapons. So starting off with the Raven bow. This bow is going to be giving you elemental mastery as a substat, which is pretty good, and the passive is going to increase your damage against opponents affected by Hydra or Pyro. Now, depending on your Tighnari's team, it can be useful, the passive, but you cannot really count on it, because if you're not using them in like a burning team, it might not be always available. So yeah, for 4-star, I'd put it at C tier. It's still definitely not going to be like a good weapon on Tighnari that you should go for, but if you don't have any weapons, I guess it can work. It's C tier. It's not that bad, it's not D, but it's C. We have the Sharpshooter's Oath. It's going to give you crit damage, which is always appreciated, and it's also going to increase your damage against weak spots. Since Tighnari is generally going to be charge attacking and aiming, this can be used. So yeah, I'd put it also C tier. It still has a low base attack, which is not really ideal on Tighnari. We have the Recurve Bow. It's going to give you HP and restore your HP. It's D tier. It's useless. We have the Slingshot. It's going to give you crit. The passive is a little bit off, but it can be used. You just have to go close to the enemies. But yeah, generally I still give it C tier. The Messenger is going to give you crit damage, and it's also going to use the charge attacks as a passive. But yeah, it's still going to be C tier too. The Ebony Bow is going to give you attack, and the passive is pretty much useless, so it's definitely going in D tier. We've got the Favonius War Bow. It's generally revolved around energy recharge. It doesn't even have like a high base attack, so it's going D tier too. Alright, so now we've got the Stringless. It's going to give you elemental mastery, which is pretty good on Tighnari. He's going to be scaling with elemental mastery a little bit, and it's also going to increase your elemental skill and burst damage, which is pretty good on Tighnari too. His elemental burst is going to be a good source for damage for him, so the Stringless is definitely going to be pretty good. So yeah, I'd put the Stringless at A tier. We have the Sacrificial Bow. It's not really going to be that good on Tighnari at all. It's going to give you energy recharge, which is you're not really going to need that, and it's also going to reset your elemental skill, which is not really that important too. I would put it C tier because of the kind of high base attack, but I definitely wouldn't say it's, you know, that good. You've got the Royal Bow. It's gonna have a medium base attack, and it's also gonna have an attack substat, which is pretty decent, but the passive is pretty much useless. So yeah, it's going C tier. Rust is gonna have a medium base attack too, with same as an attack substat, but the problem is his passive is gonna be negative, so it's gonna be decreasing your charge attack damage, which is pretty important on Tighnari. So Rust is definitely going D tier. You definitely don't want to use that on Tighnari at all. We've got the Prototype Crescent, same thing, a medium base attack and then a attack substat. The passive is going to increase your attack and movement speed if you hit opponents on weak points, which you're probably going to be able to do since you're going to be charge attacking, so this is a pretty achievable passive. Generally I'd put this weapon probably at B tier. We've got the Compound Bow. It has a pretty low base attack, a useless substat which is physical damage, but the passive is going to be kind of decent. So yeah, I'd put it at C tier. It's not bad, but it's definitely not the weapon you'd want to use on Tighnari. We've got the Blackcliff Warbow. The passive is not really going to be that good at all. It can be useful and sometimes when you're facing like smaller enemies, but generally speaking it's not really that good of a passive because it's not going to be active most of the time. But it's still going to have a decent base attack and also a crit damage substat, which is pretty good. It's going to make building characters always easier and stuff like that, so it's always going B tier. It cannot really be bad even with a bad passive because of the substat. Same thing with the Verdescent pretty much. It's going to give you crit rate substat. The passive is also going to be like simply not good, but the weapon is still going to be good. So yeah, it's going B tier. You've got the Alley Hunter. It's going to give you attack and a kind of a high base attack for a 4-star weapon, but the passive is useless because Tighnari is generally going to be on the field, so you'd want to have him on the field, which means the passive is not going to work on him. So yeah, this weapon is going C tier. It's not bad as in like D tier, but you don't want to use it on Tighnari. You have the Fade in Twilight, kind of a high base attack for a 4-star weapon too, a useless substat which is energy recharge, you don't need that, and the passive is kind of good but not really that good. It cannot really make up for it, so yeah, it's going C tier. You have the Middernaut's Waltz. This weapon is just Fischl's weapon really. No character can use it. Physical DPS Fischl, not even like general Fischl's weapon, so yeah, it's D tier. You've got the Windbloom Ode. It's gonna give you Elemental Mastery too, same as Stringless, and also after you use your elemental skills, it's gonna increase your attack, which synergizes pretty well with Tighnari because you're gonna want to use his elemental skill and then use his charge attacks. So yeah, it's a very good weapon on him. If you had it before, you definitely want to use it on Tighnari. I'd put it at A tier. We've got the Hamayumi, a pretty low base attack, but it's gonna make up for it with an attack substat, and it's also gonna increase your charge attack damage, which is pretty good. Now I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to always use the passive at like 100% because you probably don't want to like hold energy with Tighnari, but it's still gonna be pretty decent. So yeah, I'd put it at B tier. We've got the Predator, that's like Aloy's weapon. This weapon is custom made for Aloy, but it's still gonna give you like a medium base attack and an attack substat, which is not really bad. So it's not D tier, but it's C tier. Even though it's custom made for Aloy, it's technically without a passive, especially if you're not playing on PlayStation, but it's still C tier. We've got the Moon's Moon. It's gonna increase your elemental burst damage. Again, that really heavily depends on what teams are gonna be played with Tighnari, and we're still not really sure about that, but generally speaking, it's gonna be a pretty decent weapon on him. So yeah, my opinion is going B tier. It also has a kind of a high base attack, which is pretty good. We have the King Squire, that's gonna be coming out soon. It has a low base attack for a 4-star weapon, which is 41 at level 1, but it has a kind of a high attack substat. So this weapon is basically after you use your elemental skill or burst, it's gonna increase your elemental mastery, which is pretty good on Tighnari. So yeah, I'd say it's going B tier probably. We've got the Troller, a medium base attack and energy recharge substat, which is bad. Also the passive is just whatever, so I would say it's probably C tier. So yeah, it's going C tier. There's a lot of weapons at C tier. Now moving on to the 5 stars, we've got the Skyward Harp. It's gonna have an incredibly high base attack, which is very good on Tighnari. It's gonna have a crit rate substat, which is also very good, and the passive is gonna increase your crit damage too, and it's also gonna inflict some like small attacks and stuff like that, which is just additional damage. So yeah, this weapon is always gonna be very good on many characters. It's a huge stat stick. You're just gonna slap it on any character and it's gonna work. So yeah, it's gonna work on Tighnari too. It's definitely a top tier weapon, so I'd put it at S tier. We've got the Amos. It has less base attack than the Skyward, but it's gonna give you an attack substat, which is pretty good. You don't really have any crit from this weapon, but it's okay. Like that happens with many weapons. And the passive is gonna increase your charge attack damage by 12% at refinements 1. And if you're firing shots from far behind and they're spending like more time on air, then it's gonna increase it even more. So yeah, it's a very good weapon. I'll definitely put it at S tier 2. We've got the LG for the end. It has a high base attack too because it's a 5-star weapon. The substat is gonna be useless. It's energy recharge. As I said before, you don't really need that with Tighnari. The passive is just a support passive, but it's still gonna give you 60 elemental mastery, which is pretty decent. So yeah, I'd put it at B tier 2 because it's still, as I said, a 5-star weapon, high base attack, and some elemental mastery. That's not bad. We've got the Polar Star, a decent base attack, a crit rate substat, which is pretty good. It's also gonna increase your elemental burst damage, which is pretty good. It's also gonna increase your attack, probably not by like the 4 stacks, but you're definitely still gonna be able to have at least like 2 stacks from this weapon, or at least 3. So yeah, it's definitely gonna be pretty good. I would say it's A tier, or you know what, it's probably S tier. You're probably gonna have 3 stacks generally most of the time, so this can be managed. Sometimes maybe even 4, so I would say it's S tier. Maybe lower S tier, but it's still gonna be very good. We have the Aqua Simulacra, kind of a low base attack for a 4-star weapon, but it's still gonna give you a huge crit damage substat, which is pretty good. And it's also just gonna be straight up increase your damage by 20%. Yeah, I'd put it at A tier. It's probably not as good as other 5 stars, but it's definitely still a very good weapon on Tighnari. We've got the Thunder Impulse, a high base attack, a crit damage substat, which is pretty good. It's gonna increase your attack by 20% just by equipping this weapon. And other than that, the rest of the passive is probably gonna be useless. It's just gonna increase your normal attack's damage, which is, you're probably not gonna use that on Tighnari. So yeah, I'd still put it at A tier. It's still a very good weapon, but definitely not S tier. Finally, we've got the Hunter's Bat. This is Tighnari's signature weapon, which means this is the best weapon to use on him. The base attack is gonna be on the lower side for a 5-star weapon. It's gonna give you a crit rate substat, which is pretty good, but the most important thing is the passive. So it's gonna give you 12% elemental damage bonus, including obviously dendro damage bonus, and then it's gonna increase your charge attacks based on your elemental mastery. And as I said before, you're probably gonna be building some elemental mastery on Tighnari, so this is gonna be pretty good. I might do a review on this weapon for like other characters sometime soon, but yeah, just so you know, this is like definitely the best weapon on Tighnari. So yeah, it's defo going S tier and it's the best one. So yeah, this is the tier list, guys. These are the best weapons. These are like the second best weapons. The B tier are like the average weapons. C tiers are the weapons that are kind of usable, not like completely useless, but you probably don't want to use on Tighnari unless you don't have any of the weapons above. Then D tiers are the weapons you definitely don't want to use on Tighnari at all. So yeah, that's it. As I said before, there might be some changes as we know more about Tighnari, but I would say this is generally pretty accurate. Generally, probably there will be some changes like here and there, maybe this like B tier, maybe this A tier, stuff like that, but they probably won't be too drastic. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. If you want to say anything or you disagree with this ranking, leave it in the comments, and see y'all in the next video. Peace.